Wow, okay. That's more comments than I expected to get, like, in total about anything. So here we are. I'm not just going to roll the clips that I cut either, because they're about a similar enough topic that I can just rework those ideas into a poll bonus rant. Sorry this took so long, by the way. I'm sure a couple of those commenters have already forgotten about this entire thing by now. But I wanted to wait until I was almost done with my next video so there's content for the Star Wars fans, because that video is going to be about Game of Thrones, and I feel bad for the people that enjoyed my video and want more Star Wars. You will get more Star Wars eventually, but take this video as a little snack while you wait for me to either lock in on my Mandalorian pitch or have a strong opinion on the mall show. Also, I'm not actually sorry. I've been busy, and I don't owe you anything. I'll take as long as I want. There are two things to talk about with the holographic disguise matrix. There's an in-universe conversation and an out-of-universe one. Let's start with the out-of-universe one. I don't know who came up with the disguise matrix or why. Please comment if you've seen a making of documentary that mentions it or something. However, I would bet real money that it was at least in part invented to solve a problem. This arc already has a new character, Daron, who is vital to the plan, who's already been designed. And as fits a character with unique biological properties, he looks very alien compared to what we usually expect in Star Wars. However, the writers then created a plan that required everyone to be in disguise as guards. There's a problem here, which I mentioned in my video, that Daron doesn't have legs and thus cannot disguise in the traditional way. I'm pretty sure that the holographic disguise matrix was invented just as a solution to this problem. Unfortunately, this means the entire plan now centers around this technology, which was just introduced this episode. The bounty hunters don't get to use their unique abilities at all. We have Embo and Cad Bane, two of the coolest bounty hunters of this era, doing a mission together for the only time in the series, and both of them have a role that's limited to just using the tech to blend in. The only fun bounty hunter fight scenes come from the plan failing. A note for any of my aspiring writers out there: if you are assembling a group of badasses that all have to perform a plan together, maybe have them use their badass qualities? This doesn't have to be in an Ocean's 11 style where everyone handles a specific part of the plan. In the Suicide Squad movie, both of them actually, but I'm thinking about the good one, the team has a huge array of talents that aren't handpicked for a specific purpose, but they all end up being useful. Additionally, while the technology is name-dropped in the previous episode, the disguise matrix's powers are only explained as the plan is being explained to use it. Even worse, there are some additional powers the Matrix has that are not explained in advance, and we literally don't know about them until they get used. We don't know that you can disguise yourself as a civilian until we see Cad Bane doing it. We don't know you can disguise yourself as a specific real-life person until we see it being used in the plan. We don't know what can be put on an unconscious body until we see that happen. This is bad writing because it makes it impossible to predict what the plan is. Keeping the disguise matrices the same, what if, on the way to Sereno, Moralo Eval had Obi and Bane make a quick stop to pick up the technology, and then they had to use it to evade the cops, or Anakin, or whatever? Then, when it gets reintroduced in the planning episode, we can be like, oh, I remember that tech, I can see how it would be useful here. Ditto for all of the different abilities. If we knew about the other powers before they got used, for example, it's more satisfying because you can remember when they got foreshadowed. This is very basic stuff. I don't understand why they didn't do it like that. The other writing issue is that the holographic disguise matrix is just overpowered. I don't want to harp on it too long because there's another YouTuber I like that made the same points in his video about the Clone Wars, but this technology has a lot of applications. Not only can it disguise someone as anyone, including real-life figures, it also fits the person into the disguise even if the person is larger than the dimension of the disguise, which means it turns those parts of them invisible. This means it's possible that you could adapt this technology to just turn people invisible. Now, I've thought of a few fixes that they could have done in this episode to make the technology less powerful. You could say the holographic disguise matrix only works on Daron because of his biology, but, that's a little boring. My favorite edit is that, like holograms, the holographic disguise matrix is blue. It can only be blue, or maybe it can be monochrome, but I prefer it can only be blue. This means that the blue royal guards are one of the only things you could usefully disguise yourself as, and the technology could believably not show up in other circumstances where it might be needed, like in the original trilogy. This would mean you can't just disguise yourself as the Chancellor of the Galaxy, which is good for the world building, but also, I would argue, good for the episode. The plan now has to have a more exciting diversion than just a fake Palpatine. Maybe some cool fight scenes, like a chase. The episode, I think, would benefit from this change. Cad Bane's disguise would also have to be more interesting. Since he has to be completely blue, they, and by they I mean both in-universe and the art team for the Clone Wars, would have to disguise a blue alien wearing all shades of blue in a way that doesn't draw attention. This would be a fun challenge, I think. The other fix that they should have done, and this one I feel is a no-brainer, is not have the disguise matrices turn people invisible. The disguises should just scale to the height of the user, and nobody is wide enough that it would cause any issues. And you could even show this visually in the episode by having Embo put on his disguise, see that his hat is sticking out and ruining the illusion, and have to take it off. It's literally so easy. However, they did not do any of this, which leads us into the in-universe conversation about this technology. First off, let's just talk about the moments where the disguise falters and you see the face underneath. Obviously that's just for us, but is it also happening in the universe? Because in that case, this tech is terrible, and it's a miracle that the plan succeeded. But, whatever. The technology would still have the potential to work out those kinks, so no matter what, all of these points still stand. The holographic disguise matrix can allow a person to instantly take form of anyone they please, including known figures. You can also potentially adapt this technology to turn people invisible. So why do we not see this technology again in the universe? Now, that is a misleading question because it does show up in some small side stories, both as itself and we see appearances of similar technology in both canon and legends. It would be very easy to headcanon as these are all descendants of this technology. I personally have a theory about what Palpatine might do if he had the technology, and as Sheevtalk said very eloquently, Palpatine should have the technology. Even with Sinrich dead, someone would have recovered the disguise emitters that were used in the plan. That was probably the Republic, but even if they ended up in the hands of the Separatists, that would also put them under Palpatine's control. Palpatine, especially after the fall of the Republic, has a lot of resources, with scientists experimenting on stuff. So Palpatine should have the access and the resources to adapt this technology. Unless, of course, Sinrich is so incredibly smart that his technology is physically impossible to reverse engineer. As it stands, the tech must be really hard or really expensive to reproduce because we don't see it being used constantly. This makes it so stupid that Dooku let Sinrich enter the death game instead of giving him a salary as an engineer. Even if Sinrich never had a good idea in his life other than this one, hiring him to just make disguise matrices 8 hours a day would apparently be really useful since nobody else seems to manage it. But let's say, post-Clone Wars, the limitless money and science resources of the Empire are able to crack the code on this tech. I can actually forgive Palpatine for not pursuing the disguise thing, since there's not much need for subterfuge when you're literally an authoritarian tyrant. If he wants something done, he can just order it done by force. But like I said, this tech should be able to turn people invisible, given enough science-y stuff. Palps should absolutely be pursuing this. If he's the Emperor that I know and love, surely he should invest in turning this tech into something that turns people invisible. Of course, the Empire is pretty cheap, so we're not expecting every stormtrooper in the galaxy to have one, but it's totally the Imperial Army style to have a small, specialized type of soldier that can turn invisible, so it's too bad we don't see that. Hey, wait a minute! Shadow Troopers are an enemy type in Star Wars Battlefront. That means they exist on the outskirts of canon, and we shouldn't expect to see them in live action or anything. But they do canonically exist, and in the canon, they have armor that can turn them completely invisible. Now, the explanation that I found, anyway, on Wikipedia is that Shadow Troopers use a portable cloaking device, but I don't think this needs to be the same cloaking device used on large ships. I think cloaking device should just be treated as an everyday phrase rather than a technical term, like how speeder in Star Wars refers to the function rather than a specific type of engine. I don't want to give the writers of the Clone Wars or Battlefront too much credit here. If you write a ridiculous technology that doesn't exist anywhere in Star Wars, you're not bailed out by it showing up later in a different, obscure thing. Both of these things, Shadow Troopers and the Disguise Matrix, should logically be in use much more than they are. But, whatever. I think it's a fun idea that the main legacy of Sinrich's technology is Shadow Troopers. So, to summarize, the plan to kidnap the Chancellor was badly written because it's completely designed around an overpowered, just-introduced technology. The technology is amazing in universe, unless, of course, the face thing is diegetic. And Sinrich is an absolute genius for inventing it. Dooku should have hired him full-time as an engineer and should never have let him into the box. Sinrich was so smart that the tech never got mass-produced. Only some random descendants of the technology, possibly including the second coolest black stormtroopers. Like black as in their armor is black, not like a black stormtrooper. You know what I mean. Oh, also, Rook from Rebels has a technology that turns him invisible. That is, in canon, a Chiss technology, but Hera compares it to something called a Sinrich optical dephaser. So even though we never see it in canon, it looks like, somewhere out there, old Sinrich has a legacy after all.